Hello, welcome back to the Knight of. In this chapter, we're going to look at a sixth move of Bishop E2, E5, and the retreat on Knight F3. The position arises after moves E4, C5, Knight F3, D6, D4, CD9, D4, Knight F6, Knight C3, A6, and Bishop E2. Bishop E2 is a modest system, yet a very, very popular one. It's very simple, with the simple intent to castle short, develop the bishop modestly, yet effectively to E2. And it's one of the most popular systems for sure at the amateur and club level, also reasonably popular at the highest level as well. Black has essentially a choice here between the Scheveningen e6 and the e5 setup. As you know, if you've watched the chapters in the chronological order, so to speak, I've spoken about my decision to focus on the e5 setups in the Knight of, and so here as well I've decided to recommend the e5 against e6. Besides short castle, we also have to deal with moves like bishop e3 or f4, where white is aiming sometimes to go long castle after, for example, bishop e3, queen e2, which are also quite dangerous. So that's there, but I recommend the move e5. Here, the most popular move, the main move is knight b3, but this chapter focuses on the move knight f3. This variation became popular a few years ago when Magnus Carlsen is introduced it at the highest level, and it turned out to be quite interesting. It is a little bit similar to the bishop e3, e5, knight f3 line in nature, and as we will see later as well, a4, e5, knight f3 also pretty similar to that. The idea is that white wants to play a positional game. The king will castle to the king side, and there will be no crazy attacks, but white wants to play bishop g5, trade this knight, and try to control the d5 square as much as he can. I recommend after e5, knight f3 to develop with bishop e7. h6 is an alternative, but I recommend to start developing immediately. Bishop e6 is not good here because of knight g5, one of the other advantages of knight being on f3. But after bishop e7, which I recommend, white usually goes bishop g5 here. The idea of the move is that white doesn't want to allow black to finish development with bishop e6 and knight b7 and reinforce this f6 knight. White wants after bishop e6 to take on f6, and after bishop f6 have control over the d5 square. So if white were to castle first, which is not something they usually play, but of course as a very natural move, here black can start with bishop e6, which I believe is pretty strong. And the idea is that after now bishop g5, black has knight b7, and white no longer can gain control over the d5 square, because after bishop f6 we take with the knight, and the knight from f6 will control the d5 square pretty well. Here knight g5 is not dangerous with the bishop on e7, because we can simply drop the bishop back to d7, and after bishop c4 we can castle short without any problems, and there's no issue here at all. So essentially after castle bishop e6, white has to play something different. I look at the move bishop e3, castle queen d2, but basically if white wants to play it this way, he should do so with the knight on b3, not on f3. There's very little the knight does here. After queen d2 you can play h6, and the f pawn is not able to be pushed to f4, and white lacks ideas here with the knight on f3, and for example rook f1, knight d7, a4. Yeah, I give knight g4, but I believe there are many different ways to play. Also, if white starts with h3, you can go for rook c8, a4, knight c5. And after 12, a4, knight g4, the problem for white is not that he loses the e3 bishop, but that he cannot gain control of the d5 square, because our other knight will go to f6. So the point of knight f3 system is to go bishop g5 on move 8, and now we play bishop e6. There is a move knight b7, and it would be quite good if white were to take on f6, and then we would be able to recapture. But the knight on d7 is in the way of this bishop, and bishop not being on e6, white will get quite some control over the d5 square here. And I I don't recommend this move, although it is certainly playable and we played also at the high level. But bishop e6 is the main move I propose. I like starting with bishop e6 immediately instead of castling. To clarify the situation, we intend to now play knight b7, which would be very harmonious. This bishop e7, bishop e6, knight d7 setup is just very smooth. All pieces are developed harmoniously. And so by playing bishop e6, we essentially force white to take on f6. And now after bishop f6, white has a few different options and the different move orders. Essentially, the play revolves around this d5 square. There are three options here. So there is queen d2 and knight d5 and castle. A lot of transpositions. So let's look at the moves one by one. So knight d5 is a little bit strange. It's better to start for white with a short castle first. And after knight d5, we can play knight d7. Knight f6 always met by knight f6. It's pointless for white. Here, if white castles, there is a very strong nuance, and that is rook c8. We do not allow white to grab control of this d5 square with bishop c4, bishop b3. And this happened in the game between Aryan Tari and Dinglirian in the Club Cup 2017, when Dinglirian showed very good understanding of the knight by playing this move rook c8 before castling. A very subtle, very strong move. Instead of a short castle, white should go bishop c4 here, but he can also do that with castles included, and he should. But probably black doesn't have anything special here other than just castle. When we transpose to the line we'll talk about later with short castle. So knight d5, no independent value. We'll discuss these positions later. Queen d2, also no real independent value. I believe we castle. White castles short. If white castles long, we can play queen b6. The f2 pawn is quite awkward here. And after rook hf1, we can ignore the d6 pawn, play rook c8, queen d6, and knight c6. And white has grabbed the pawn, but his queen is now exposed. We're threatening rook d8, followed by bishop e7. If the queen retreats, there's also knight b4, all sorts of tricks and ideas along the c file, and the white king is not doing well, and this d6 pawn just opens diagonals for our pieces. I believe long castle is not exactly the way to play. And after short castle, we will transpose again to a 10th short castle. So let's look at that. Short castle, move 10. Now we castle short as well, and here white has a real choice, and there are two setups that have been played. So there's this knight d5, bishop c4 idea, and there is the move queen d2. Also, there is an idea of a4. It's not been played much, but it's also quite interesting. White is trying to wait a little bit, and after bishop e7, intending knight d7, then to play knight d5 perhaps. But here we have, after a4, a special move, queen a5, which is quite strong here. We're using the fact that the b4 square is weak, and taking on d6 is not a good move because of rook d8, and the queen has to go to a3, and then after knight c6 and bishop e7, there are all sorts of problems for the queen. After queen a5, white should just finish development with queen d2, intending rook fd1 and knight d5. The position is quite level. After knight c6, rook fd1, we play simply rook ac8, and preparing for knight d5. After knight d5, we capture on d5, queen d5, rook d5, and play knight b4. Also, instead of bishop takes d5, we could take on d2 first. It would be the same after rook d2, and knight takes f6 intermezzo is not a big deal either. In general, once white trades this knight from d5, the other knight on f3 becomes quite a bad piece, being so far away from the d5 square. So yeah, also taking on d5 first is good. Take on d5 twice, rook d5, and now knight b4, trading d6 pawn for the c2 pawn, rook d6, rook c2, and just a lot of simplifications and equality happened here. So a4, 11 a4, a rare move, trying to be clever, but we have this queen a5, which solves the issue. Now let's look at queen d2 and knight d5. So queen d2 first. Here, in general, black wants to develop the knight to d7, but he needs to first drop the bishop back to e7. But we don't have to do it just yet. We make a useful move queen c7, wait for white to play rook fd1 or rook a1, and then play bishop e7. Here, let's look at different moves. They're all pretty similar in essence. So rook ad1, it has no real purpose compared to rook fd1. The rook is usually better located on the a file than f file here, because white might want to push a4, a5 one day. But rook ad1 has one point after bishop e7, this knight g5 move, perhaps trying to use the f pawn, but it doesn't really work after knight d7. We allow white to take on e6, fe6, and as we know, this structure is very good for black. The pawn on e6 guards the d5 square, and all we have to make sure in these cases is that there is no direct issue, and there isn't, because after bishop g4 we have the move rook f6, simply defending the pawn, and as little white can do to black. I think black is doing very well here. So rook ad1, not a great move. Rook fd1, more to the point. After bishop e7, now white goes for knight d5. If not, we'll just finish development with knight d7. So knight d5 is essentially his plan. Bishop d5, queen d5. And after knight d7, we reach a standard position for this line. Also, similar positions occur sometimes with the knight not on f3 but on b3, as we'll see in the knight b3 chapter. But these positions are very important for the knight. It's important to understand them. It's not too complicated. The basic idea is that the f3 or b3 knight, for that matter, this knight is too far away from the d5 square. If we had imagined that the knight would magically appear on the d5 square, white would enjoy a very pleasant position, but the knight is just much too far. These diagonally 3 squares, is a very long journey. If you know what I mean. Basically, from f3 to d5, it takes him a lot of moves. Knight d2, knight f1, knight e3, and knight d5. And the problem always with these maneuvers is that at the moment white is ready to go for knight e3, we will have bishop g5 stopping that. So, for example, knight d2, and here b5 is a strong want to stop knight c4. Now, if white goes for c4, we simply play b4, and this change of structure is very good. The bishop on e2 became only more passive, and the c5 square has become tremendous. Whenever white is ready for knight f1, knight e3, again we have bishop g5 option. Also, bishop d8 to b6 is a possibility. On the queen side, we will advance with a5, a4, and sometimes b3, fixing the b2 pawn. This structure is simply already preferable for black with these particular pieces left on the board. And so instead of c4, white should do something else. He should play perhaps c3. And now the different ways of playing, but I like rook a8, going for the direct d5 push. Besides this bishop g5 idea that black has to stop knight e3, black also has this d5 push idea, and white really doesn't manage to transfer his pieces to the squares he wants to transfer them to. So this position is pretty good, and it's very important that you play these positions well, because I think that there is potential to take over in the initiative, and I've myself managed to outplay some of my opponents in such positions. Similar position arises after 12 knight d5 without inclusion of rook fd1, bishop e7. Very similar. Often it can just transpose. For example, after takes, knight d7, c3, bishop e7. Bishop e7 is essentially a useful move anyway, and now after rook fd1 we also would transpose again to the position we just discussed. All very similar. But here white can try to play something else. You can play queen c4. Queen c4 is not a particularly dangerous move. Black is here has a choice. We can keep the queens with queen b6, queen b8. We can also trade them. If we want to trade them, probably better not to take, but play rook c8 first. In the endgame too, white is not quite able to get the knights on d5, and that's important. We also want to start our counterplay on the queen side with b5, then send a rook to b8, sometimes advance these pawns on the queen side. Again, very important in these lines to watch out for the knight maneuver. So after knight fd2, knight c4, knight e3 is the idea on move 15. Here we go b5. taking control of the c4 square. And I'll give an example line just to demonstrate all these ideas I was talking about. Rook fd1, rook fd8. Again, we are hinting at the d5 break. Queen d3. Here, black can already go for knight b6 or knight f6 and d5. Sorry, d5 plans, but I'd like to show you also the other way of playing, because sometimes maybe in this line, but or maybe in some other similar line, you might not always be in time to get the d5 push, and then you should also know how to handle the position without it. It's not essential to push d5 this quickly. As long as we stop knight from coming to d5, we are doing quite well. So, for example, g6, king g7. By the way, always very nice little upgrade to our king, grabbing potentially important f5 square. Moving the king a little bit upwards, always very helpful. For example, after 18 knight f1, you play here knight c5. It's important to protect the d6 pawn. The idea is that once the queen moves, we have this bishop g5 move. And as you already know, we stop this knight e3 idea. And once we have such a position, it's very hard for white to play, I believe. I have a lot of experience playing these positions in blitz games. Usually my opponents get outplayed, not because I do something tremendous, but simply because once this knight e3 idea is not really helping, white just lacks ideas, while black has a lot of useful moves. King come to g8, rook b8 or c8. You can sometimes advance on the queen side. So play can continue with g3. It's nice to go h5, so that after h4 we have bishop h6. It's always better, of course, to have the pawn in front of the bishop. And now, white's essentially out of ideas. After, for example, bishop f3, we play rook a b8, a3 a5. We might want to push b4, and I think in such a position, black is just a little more comfortable already. Again, not very complex, quite simple. We just need to stop the knight from coming to d5, and then the square has little value for white, and black is doing very well. That is about it for this knight d5, bishop takes d5 idea. White can play also 11 knight d5. Now taking on d5 would be at a loss of a full tempo. So as you know, it's a tempo game. So if you give him a full tempo, the same regroup might suddenly work. So this is not what I recommend, and there's also no need here. I recommend to play knight d7. Here the knight is in the way of the queen, so we didn't need to go bishop e7 to play knight d7. So that's why we play knight d7. So what I'm trying to say is, do not get confused. Against immediate knight d5, we should play knight d7, and against queen d2, we should play for queen c7. And now when knight comes to d5, we can now capture it, because white spent the whole tempo on queen d2, and we got this extra useful move, queen c7, for free. Likewise, after queen d2, playing for knight d7 would be losing a tempo, because now we made this useless move, bishop e7. So just two different ideas. Against knight d5, knight d7, white plays bishop c4. It's important for him to reroute his bishop to b3 to fight for the d5 square. If we get rook c8, like in the Dinglerian game, white will have serious issues with the control of the d5 square. So here, white should go bishop c4. And now there are many ways of playing. I had this position actually with white and with black, and I think in both games, my black game against Vishanand and white game against Duda, games went rook c8 and queen e2, I believe, and knight b6, and we played this position, which is fine. Also possible to go for b5, many different ways, but I like actually a new move here, at least as of now, I believe, a new move and a very strong regroup, queen c8, a very unusual idea, but a pretty cool one actually. The idea is, well, for starters, we attack the c4 bishop. Next, we want to drop the bishop to d8, and the bishop can very often find a good future on the b6 square, but the other idea of dropping the bishop away from the f6 square is to let the f pawn be pushed forward 2 squares. So just to give you an example line, queen e2, bishop b3 will be similar. We go bishop d8. Probably it will transpose to some similar lines here. We will play knight c5 next, and go for f5 break eventually. A very harmonious setup here. The bishop from d8 is ready to jump to b6 whenever the knight from d5 will disappear. After 13 queen e2, we kick the bishop back to b3 by force with b5, and after bishop b3, play bishop d8. Again, the same story. We want to follow up with knight c5, perhaps king h8 first, and then push f5. And bishop is always ready to come to b6. Example line would be a3, knight c5, bishop a2. White is trying to hang on to his light squared bishop. Very logical. And now we play king h8. We don't hide the fact that we're ready to go for f5. And already, I believe this position is quite promising for black. After, for example, rook ad1, we push with f5, and after ef bishop f5, we have an idea of bishop g4, and after knight e3. Those who have already looked at the chapter with bishop e3, e5, knight f3 know that in such positions we have this very strong idea of bishop g6, and we will get our pin after all with bishop h5, and we will join this important diagonal and put pressure on the f3 knight. And white has no time to take on d6, because after bishop h5 he's already in quite some danger with e4 incoming. So I think pretty good idea. This queen c8, bishop d8. I had it already for a long time. I think very interesting, very double-edged too. I like that. I think it gives us good counter chances. And also this simple position. Many players that I've faced in classical chess, also in Blitz, they feel that these type of positions where they trade knight on d5, that they are safe for them, because they think, that they have the square, we have nothing in return, is what they think. They think, the opposite colored bishop, so very little danger of losing. But you'll be surprised how easily these positions can go wrong for white. So in general, bishop e2, it is a solid system, but I don't think it is as promising for white as some people think, and I don't think it's so safe for him either. So I think in general, if you know these typical positions, you know the plans, we are in good shape here. So I think with that I conclude the bishop e2, e5, and knight f3 chapter, and in the subsequent chapters we will look at the move knight b3, and there's a lot more theory. This is a more traditional move, older move, with much more different plans, many more different plans for white. So see you all in the next chapters, and thank you for watching.